struggle in life ends when gratitude begins.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, George Valenzuela.
This is education coach George Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it. We are here today with my very good friend, Drew Hirshon. Drew is an assistant director of curriculum and instruction at District 70 in Colorado Springs. He's also an instructional coach, a PBL expert, and one of my favorite people. How are you?
I'm great, George. Doing fantastic.
I love that you excel in three major areas of your life. Number one, you put family first. Number two, you're a kick-ass entrepreneur like myself. And number three, you are passionate about fitness. Before we get into each of these things and how you excel at them at such a high level, please introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Drew Hirshon. I'm the assistant director of curriculum and instruction in Pueblo, Colorado. Prior to that, I was a principal. Prior to that, I was a STEM coordinator and teacher. I've been in education for 18 years. On my entrepreneur side, I've been working with several districts. I've been national faculty with PBL Works for, I want to say 6 years now. And I also support my wife in owning a salon in our city. And I have two wonderful kids, both in athletics, both very bright. And as George mentioned, I love fitness. I love taking care of my mind, body, and soul. Those are all very important to me and have shaped who I am today.
Drew, you and I met years ago when we were both national faculty with the Buck Institute for Education. And we hit it off fast, man. I believe it's because we have very similar outlooks on family and life in general. Mm-hmm. That was back in 2017, and we've been in constant contact since then, including having our families meet. But from your perspective, how has our relationship evolved and where are we today?
I was thinking back about the days when we first met one another, and I was like unsure, hey, I don't know, who is this guy? What's this guy all about? And I think we hit it off right away because, like you had mentioned, we're very like-minded and we want to not just excel in our personal lives, but we really want to see others grow. And I saw that in you right away. Not just that, but I also made a connection with you on the STEM side. We hit it off right away. I was
That's right.
Oh, you're a science guy, project-based learning. You're doing some rad stuff with kids. I was doing some rad stuff with kids. I remember we just continued to have those conversations. And I think the biggest piece was I was able to have a deep conversation with you. Not just about curriculum, instruction, coaching, project-based learning, all of those things, but I was also able to make a connection with you at a deeper level in regards to our families and our upbringing and experiences that we have in life and how we can overcome those things and how we could support one another in relationships, in family. Mm-hmm. That's how our relationship has continued to grow. And I've been so grateful that I've been able to continue that friendship with you where I know, and it's rare these days where you can just call on somebody and be like, hey, I got this idea, or I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? And you have someone who will respond and with authenticity, right? Give you a real response instead of something very surface level. I've always appreciated that. And I hope I give the same thing back to you.
For sure. What sets you apart is you're able to build great relationships and great rapport with people. For me, relationship boundaries is an important thing. What I often see in people is that they don't know how to define relationship boundaries. When I tell them in my personal relationships, I'm looking for loyalty, love, companionship. But in my professional ones, I'm looking to meet my professional goals and help other people with theirs. And that's what I see in you. You're not only trying to accomplish great things for you and your family, but you're helping every person you interact with at the building level, at the school level, at the district level, and in all your work. And that shines through. And I appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
This is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast. On this show, we interview people who are excelling in three major areas of their lives so that we can learn from them to experience similar success. Drew, please describe your views on being a family man.
My views on being a family man is that's my number one value. And I think it's so important when you think about all the things in life. There's so many things, like your education, your job, wealth, growth, all these things that you could think about in life. I truly value family as number one. All my actions that I take align to that. And I think that's something that for me, I have to remind myself that is my number one priority. And I find ways, even with my busy schedule as a family man, to connect with my wife, with my kids, and make sure that I make those connections, that they're not just, hey, how are you doing today? And that's it. It's making sure that I know what's happening in their life, that I provide space for them to communicate with me. And I think those are really important to me. And being a family man, that's where I value my family, number one.
These are definitely values that I know you live by. And when I was in Colorado Springs and I got to spend some time with you and your wife, Lindsay, that really shone through. Please take a moment to describe your relationship with your wife.
Right off the bat, she's my best friend. That is where our relationship stems from, is I truly care about her goals. I care about how she feels. I do everything that I can to support her and grow her the same way that she does for me. That's the importance of having a strong relationship with your spouse, is being able to understand what their needs are, find out what their needs are, listen, and then support.
What I'm hearing is that it's a partnership. It's definitely a partnership. I think a lot of people don't have sight of that, or they lose sight of that. Drew, what would you tell a person who is struggling to connect with his or her spouse?
I would suggest find out what your needs are, find out what their needs are, and compromise. I think that's something with any good relationship, is finding a common ground that you can compromise and work through together and make time. I make sure I make time with my wife, Lindsay, at least once a week. And having two kids, and they're in all the sports, and she owns a business. I'm a director of a curriculum instruction. It gets hectic, it gets busy, but make time. We even talk about making time in evenings just for us to talk, to catch up, right, in the house. Sometimes you could be on your phone or you could be watching TV, but no, you got to find some time outside of that.
I know my wife is watching this and saying, see, you have to make time. I will definitely make it a point to make time. For folks out there listening, you have to set a schedule. It makes things easier. And then eventually you don't need one. It's just what we do. Drew, tell us about your two beautiful kids.
Oh, my favorite. I'm just kidding. My wife's my favorite too. They're all my favorite.
I often tell people in family, at the school, wherever, that my favorite is who I'm talking to in the moment.
There you go. I don't know if you've heard a lot of Deion Sanders. They're like, Deion Sanders ranks his kids, and they're like, you rank your kids? He's like, yeah. I rank them based on where they're at, and I move them. And I'm like, I don't know if I can
Oh,
do that.
man.
Yeah,
I can't do that either.
Anyway, so my kiddos, my son, who is 10 years old, his name is Jaya, and my daughter is Presley. She's 11. She'll be 12 here in October. They are both very different, both very special in their own way. My son is a baseball player, loves engineering, loves playing video games, of course, just like I think most boys do. I was the same way. And my daughter, she's very creative. She loves art. She's super social. She loves to communicate and make new friends. Her friends are very important to her. She's also a softball player and an athlete as well. So both my kiddos are athletes, and they don't love school yet, but they both excel in school.
Drew, what are some fun things parents can do to strengthen their relationships with their kids?
I think strengthening a relationship with your kids can come in a lot of different forms. For me, it's finding out what my kiddos are interested in and really caring about it. And I was guilty of this when they were younger, where I would say, hey, you got to get off that game. You need to get outside and play. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I'll try to connect with them with something that maybe I thought would be a good thing that we could do. And that wasn't working. Now I've changed my thinking. I want to find out what they're interested in, what they care about, and then leverage that to build a relationship. With my son, he loves MLB The Show right now. I'm going to make time to play MLB The Show with him. Even though I might not like it a whole lot, it's easier for me in that case. Whereas Presley, she likes to draw. I make time to sit down, and even if I'm just watching her draw, I'm talking to her. I'm finding time to just communicate and talk. And those are her moments where she can open up to me, where it doesn't feel like it's driven by me. She can drive the conversation, whether she wants to share, whether she doesn't want to share. I'm just there, interested in something that she's doing and that she cares about. Even talking about the ways that she's communicating with her friends. She loves TikTok and Snapchat, and I'll do some TikToks. I'll do those things to build that relationship with them so we can have open and honest conversations.
I can so relate to this, and I wish I would have known this information about 2 years ago. Stranger Things was my daughter's favorite show. I tried in the beginning to get into it, and season 1 was cool for me, but after a while, it got too dark, and it became too much of a fantasy for me after a while. And I started falling asleep. In hindsight, I realize now I should have maybe watched it earlier in the evening and not the last thing at the end of the day, and shown a little more interest. I appreciate you saying that because I know a lot of other parents are struggling in that regard. So for folks out there listening, take interest in what your kids like, but do it in a genuine way for improving their relationship or making it stronger. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, and share this podcast with your family, friends, and colleagues. And now for a word from one of our sponsors. Are technology issues slowing you down at your school? If that's the case, look no further than 5-Star Technology's Virtual Help Desk. Their team of experts are available to support you remotely, resolving up to 40% of common issues like password resets, device connectivity, and lots more. With just a few clicks, you'll have access to their live chat from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Just enter your email to get started. Then you'll live chat with one of 5-Star's EdTech experts to diagnose your problem. And if their virtual help desk agent can't solve the issue completely, they will dispatch the ticket to your school's on-site tech team. Let 5-Star Technology Solutions be your support partner. Experience their virtual help desk, which is affordable, efficient, and always there for you. Please contact them at 5startech.com/contact us. Once again, 5startech.com/contact us. And for your convenience, you'll find this link in the episode show notes. Let's transition into your coaching work. Drew, how did you get into coaching educators?
About 8 years into me teaching, I was thrusted into a role where I was teaching a second math class for students who already did not like math. I had to figure out real quickly how I could engage these students in math in a unique and different way because they already did not like math. Oh, and by the way, I didn't have any kind of curriculum to support me. I had to just figure it out on my own with 35 kids in the classroom too. I started just do my own research on what was out there to engage kiddos, and project-based learning was one of those. So I started trying some different ways to just engage kids in some authentic learning. And at that time, it wasn't true project-based learning, but I was doing my best to just engage them in things that I felt were a little more authentic to them in regards to math. That work moved me into an opportunity as the principal kind of noticed, hey, Drew's doing some cool stuff with kids. We ended up getting a STEM grant, and I was asked to take the opportunity to become the STEM TOSA of the school, and started to launch the Project Lead the Way programs. And then that was where we had partnered with the Buck Institute for Education. We brought PBL to our school. And I was working with a national faculty member named Christy Lathrop, who did our PBL 101s and stuff like that. And she ended up coming back for some support visits after that. She saw the work that I was doing within the professional learning communities with some difficult situations. She saw how I handled those difficult situations and ultimately continued to grow those relationships in a way that they wanted to work with me to ultimately improve instruction. She was like, hey, Drew, if you're doing this work here, you got to be able to do this work for the Buck Institute. So then I applied to become national faculty. The rest is really history. I've been coaching educators from then on and growing my craft and growing my knowledge around not only coaching, project-based learning, and just good instructional practices across the board, and ultimately into leadership.
I met Christy too at my time at BIE and PBO Works, and she's an OG. She's a G. Much love to Christy. Big shout out.
For sure.
That's really a great story. And I think those that are listening, that are interested in becoming a professional coach, an instructional coach, need to realize It starts with our work with children. Number one is being able to showcase our skill sets or improve our skill sets and then showcase them with young people.
That's a great point, George. I think people can do that if they just say yes. In my situation, I was asked, and it was uncomfortable at first. Taking that risk and pushing myself a little bit really helped me grow. And that experience of being a little bit uncomfortable about, hey, should I take on this role? Am I good enough to do this? I had to get over that and just ultimately say, I can do this. It is going to be hard, but being willing to grind it out and to learn a little bit more and push yourself a little bit more really has helped me become who I am now. And I would never be in the position I am now if I did not say yes back then. I want to highlight that.
That's why I had you on the show, man. Stuff like that. People need to realize when they're invited to do something, they may not know how they're going to perform it or even how to perform it, but they are ready. That's why they were invited. Now it just takes having to figure it out. When we figure out one thing and we do it well, it leads to another thing and then another thing. And before you know it, you have a string of successes that lead to bigger things. That's a great point. Drew, what would you tell a person looking to get into instructional coaching but doesn't know where to begin?
Start out as an instructional coach or just is in a role of an instructional coach but hasn't had a whole lot of training, because sometimes you get thrusted into those roles because you're a good teacher. And I think coaching is much different than being in a classroom working with students, because now you're working with adults. And I think it does start first with building those relationships, that understanding that there's some confidentiality and some trust anchored in that area. Along with that, making sure that there are clear and simple expectations between the relationship that you have. And with that, goals that are focused on what the teacher you're working with are establishing. I think it's so important that you also make that clear that, hey, our relationship is not a friend relationship. It's a little bit different than that. We're going to have a relationship, but our focus is going to be on your goals. I think that's super important. And then the next piece of advice I would give would be giving fast feedback, fair, accurate, specific, and timely feedback. And one last point, stick to a schedule. Have a schedule. Just like in life, your personal life, as you alluded to, George, have a schedule with those individuals that you're coaching. So that way you are continually focused and revisiting those goals that you have in place for your client.
Timely feedback is definitely one of the high yielding strategies in visible learning. People need consistent, timely, and specific feedback. I love that you said that. Schedules are also important. I find that they're hard to start, but once people start them, they're able to follow them. Tell us a little bit about your fitness journey. How did you start?
I was a little kid in my house, just wanted to get swelled up. That's where it began. And to be honest, it began at that age because I was small and I was an athlete and I wanted to be the other athletes I saw on TV. And I knew that was something that I had to do. But as far as my true fitness journey of where I'm at now as an adult, it's just grown through athletics. I did play college baseball, but to get there, I had to be very regimented. I had to be very disciplined to be able to have the skill set that I had to be able to perform. I've always carried that on into my personal life now as an adult. When I talk about fitness, like fitness is my life. It's just a part of who I am, what I do. But I truly believe that when I say like mind, body, and soul, like your body is so connected to your mind and your soul. If I don't have that, my other two areas of my life are not well. That's why my fitness is important to me.
That's a great answer. There's a whole person. And I believe that we each need to address the whole person, each aspect of us. Drew, what would you tell a person that is wanting to get on their fitness journey, but they're not sure where to start?
Goes back to that schedule. Make time. And I'm big on doing something every day. I'm also big on get 1% better. If you can get 1% better every single day, it builds. It truly is a process. If anything is a process in life, fitness is a process. And you're not going to just get the look that you're going for, that feeling that you're going for by only going once a week or every other day. It's a process, which I think we can all connect with a process in fitness is just like the process in learning and everything else within your life.
That's such a great answer. Everyone listening out there, have a process and be consistent. And now for a word from one of our sponsors. If you're a STEM and PBL teacher like me, you're always on the lookout for new project ideas and resources. You know George does PBL, and I'm telling you, look no further than SmartLab. SmartLab really has a fresh take on STEM and PBL. I'm proud to be a partner, and they sponsor the podcast. But just don't take my word for it. Check out what other educators are saying about SmartLab.
When students enter into SmartLab, they are allowed to think outside of traditional norms.
It gives them a lot of agency. They feel empowered and important. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the SmartLab environment and the way the project process is set up.
SmartLab becomes this place where they can do those things and have the time and space to like communicate better and even like deal with social emotional stuff. Like they're having a bad day. A SmartLab's a place where we can change the pace of what they're learning to match their mental needs for the day. And that comes back tenfold later on when they want to be there and they want to learn and they want to do stuff and they feel safe and they feel like they can get the things they need.
That's one of the big benefits of being in more of a collaborative environment is it makes you have to work. It makes you have to be accountable.
Please look in this episode's show notes for a link to connect with SmartLab. We are now winding down with Drew, and we're going to get into the quick fire question round of the podcast. Drew, what are your top 3 ed tech tools?
ChatGPT is number 1, number 2, and number 3. Honestly, right now, that's the tool. It does everything. It truly does. It saves time, helps with planning, support, can give you nuggets to find research. It can help you with workflow. It truly is a game changer. And if you're an educator, if you're in the classroom and you need help planning a unit, you need help planning a lesson, you need to find engagement strategies, it's a quick way to get some of those without having to dig through a bunch of resources.
Drew, what's your favorite education book and why?
Honestly, there's so many. One that I refer back to quite often to help teachers with tier 1 instruction, just instructional practices, especially if a teacher's trying to transition to a project-based model. I really love Susie Boss and John Larmer's The Project-Based Teaching Practices. I find that it has a lot of great strategies in there around great tier 1 instruction. I keep going back to that. Scaffolding is in there, strategies to engage and coach students, designing and planning, the use of protocols, how to support student management and self-management strategies. I think that's a really great book that can help teachers who feel like everything can be so big. Pick a spot that they want to focus on and grow in, and there's some concrete strategies that they can pull from.
What I love about project-based learning and PBL, as you just mentioned, it gives educators a playbook. It gives them strategies. It gives them protocols. It gives them things that they can immediately start doing with kids and start seeing success. Mm-hmm. For me, though, I didn't understand the science behind those things until I got into the PhD program. Schools can easily help teachers with this if they do a book study in tandem with doing the PD.
A book that I feel changed my life, this is years ago, probably a decade ago, was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. That book really helped me establish what I truly valued, align my beliefs, and taught me about creating action steps to achieving the person that I want to be in my life. As a man, as a father, as a husband, professionally, all those things. It really helped me connect to where I wanted to go in my life.
Drew, what's your favorite education conference and why?
I have to say ASCD. I actually attended as my first time this year. And as a leader, I loved it because I can create threads that I wanted to dig into and go to different sessions that really met my needs of where I wanted to grow.
Drew, what are 3 things that people should do every day?
Exercise, read and write, and practice gratitude.
Drew, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
In education, there's always going to be change. So when change happens, innovate.
Drew, I picked 3 things that I love and respect about you. And just to recap, you put family first, you're a great instructional coach, and you're passionate about fitness. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want people watching or listening to know about you?
I I think you covered it, George. You know me pretty well. Those are the big pieces in my life. I'm very passionate about the work that I do with educators. I believe in the work that we do as a team, myself and my team here at the district, and what we're trying to carry out. As a family man, I want to continue to just do what's best for my kids and my wife. And you covered it. You know me well.
This is the part of the show where I give you your flowers. I don't believe in telling people how you feel about them after they're gone. Drew, you are not just a nice guy, but you're a good man. You have excellent character, excellent values. You are not just great to your family, but I've seen you be great to every single person that you interact with. I completely respect that. I don't tell a lot of people this. I love you, dude.
Love you too.
I am so glad that we are friends. I'm very excited about what the future holds. Most importantly, I can't wait to see where you end up. You've been on an insane trajectory of constant growth. So I can't wait to see you as superintendent, as a major CEO of something. I'm excited.
Thank you, George. Love you, man.
All right, let's put this into the universe. How can people contact you so they can book you to speak, to coach, not just in Colorado Springs, but all around the world?
You could reach me at Twitter at Drew Hirshon. Pretty straightforward. And I'll throw my email right out there. It's hirshon@gmail.com.
That's it for this episode. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with George Valenzuela.